Hi, my name is Mandy Blackburn, and this is my long presentation on what makes up the good life. For this presentation, I chose to focus on Finland and the Finnish people. A lot of this comes from the fact that I married a third-generation immigrant from Finland. My husband's grandfather came over during World War II. He enlisted, he became a sergeant, he became a citizen, and he was able to bring his wife over and start a family and settle in Minnesota and eventually make their way up to Alaska. I think it's a fascinating culture. I think they have very similar worldviews to what we see in a lot of Alaska, and I think it's something that can really be appreciated looking from the outside looking in. So, to start with, we're going to go over the national identity, or what makes up the national identity of the Finnish people. In general, the Finnish people are very proud and extremely independent. They take pride in their work and in the country that they've built since their independence. The independence that they gained from Sweden and Russia is a specific point of pride for the country as a whole. You hear a lot of stories and jokes and a lot of back and forth between Swedes and Finns and Ruskies, and there are some off-color jokes and they're Sven jokes, and there's all sorts of almost a sibling rivalry between them now. It's become a more friendly rivalry, but the Finns are extremely proud of the fact that they are no longer under Russian or Swedish rule, and they feel that that makes them the best country. And they will insist on telling you that they have the absolute best country in the world. And they want to tell you stories about why it's the best country in the world. And they will tell you long, elaborate, elegant stories about how they fought through cold winters and all of these lovely, wonderful things to show you how proud they are and how much they love their country. And they will argue with you over who makes the better vodka. And if you ask a Finn, Finland makes a better vodka than Russia. But it's that sort of thing. It's become a very, again, sibling rivalry type relationship between the countries and between their citizens, and it's something that's very interesting to watch and see how they work with each other. Most Finns are somehow educated post-elementary school. Most of them are somehow vocationally educated specifically, and they strive to have a career or have one or two focuses that will make it able for them to provide for their family. They don't like to hop necessarily from job to job to job. They focus on like carpentry and farming so that they can make a house and upkeep it and have food to be able to provide for their family, and similar things along those lines. Since their independence from Russia, as that's the most recent independence, there have been a lot of changes in their human rights. One of the major changes is that when they separated from Russia, it became mandatory for all male Finnish citizens to serve in the military for somewhere between 6 to 12 months. This depended on what rank they went in. So an officer has to stay in longer than a general enlisted person. If you become an NCO or a non-commissioned officer, for those that don't understand that reference, then you have to stay in longer than just a general enlisted person. If you go in a position that they need more of, say you're an engineer over an infantry or you're a medic over an engineer, you might have to stay in longer depending on how much they need you and how much they want to have someone to serve in that position. More recently, women have actually been able to volunteer to serve this term. It's not a mandatory, but they can volunteer. The change with this is that they're given the option to back out within the first 45 days. If they choose to back out in the first 45 days, nothing is held against them. If they choose to stay in past those 45 days, they have to serve the same term as any of the men in whatever rank and position that they've gone into, and they're held to the same standard as the men, and they're treated as equals. Women have been able to seek out higher education and vocational schools, and education through a 9th grade level is mandatory for all children, regardless of gender. Public education and medical care is available for all. This is something that the Finns specifically see as necessary and mandatory to have a working, functional society. Women's rights have progressed quickly since the independence, and women have equal access to higher education. So what constitutes the Finnish good life? The Finns are proud to be craftsmen and women, and look for careers they can be happy and proud to be a part of and share with their family. My husband's grandfather came to the United States. He enlisted in the Army. He became a sergeant. When he got out, he bought a farm in Minnesota, or more specifically, he bought a farm before he left the military. But he moved to the farm after he got out, and he raised the family there. And then after the family was established, he started moving across the country and started building houses, because what he had for his craft was carpentry. And he would build these absolutely beautiful houses with hand-carved beams and other absolutely elaborate, gorgeous things. And he'd build one, and he'd sell it, and he'd move on. And that was how he provided for him and his wife as they moved across the country and eventually made their way to Alaska. So it's things like that. They want something that they can be proud of. And this was something that my husband's grandfather was extremely proud of, was his ability to make these houses and to create these absolutely beautiful pieces and be able to have them be appreciated by people outside of his family, and also in this way provide for he and his wife as they continued their progression into where they wanted to be. The citizens of Finland believe that universal education and medical care is necessary, and it's to the benefit of everyone, and that's why it is necessary. It's a benefit to the general society as a whole, and it creates a more educated and more compassionate society. Access to higher education, whether it's vocational or educational, it's available to all. Although space in the educational programs specifically is limited, and so you'll see a lot of Finnish citizens, when they finish out with their high school equivalent, they'll go into a vocational school because they're more likely to be able to get a space in a vocational school over the educational programs. The rates of crime against children are extremely low because Finland takes the protection of its children very seriously, and the penalties are extremely strict. This results in an almost negligible rate of child abuse throughout the country. There are also stringent penalties for violence against women, specifically focusing on cases of rape and domestic abuse. Finns are content with a sturdy roof over their heads, hot food on the table, and family and friends to spend the cold winters with. They ask for simple things, for health, and for the ability to strive for happiness for themselves, their families, and friends. They believe in a strong national identity, and they are fiercely protective of their independence that they have fought so hard to win, and is still fairly recent for them as a society in general. There's a strong sense of family and community that we see in a lot of cold, harsh, remote places. Which leads me to my conclusion, because overall Finland really reminds me of Alaska, especially interior Alaska, in so many ways. The people in Finland have to survive in a very similar climate to what we have in Alaska, and that climate in general seems to create a certain type of person. These people tend to be willing to assist strangers. We see this over winters here in Alaska. If a car breaks down on the side of the road, you can almost guarantee you're going to have at least 3 cars pull over or slow down and ask if you need anything before they continue on their way. Or you'll have somebody pull over and offer to let you sit in their car and stay warm until the tow truck gets there, until the trooper gets there, until whoever's coming to give you a jump start, or they'll give you a jump start. So we see that in that willingness to assist strangers in these cold climates. Finns and Alaskans both seem to take in friends, even though they may have been complete strangers at some point, and make them their family. And this is something that I have experienced personally in a huge scale almost. I was taken in by friends who then ended up introducing me to my husband, and we're just a very big family, and they have been a family since high school, and I've become a little sister to most of my husband's friends. And his family has welcomed me in, and the Finnish side of his family is extremely loyal and devoted. And it's just fascinating to now be part of this family that makes up this complex and compassionate group. And in addition, we seem to see that people in this type of climate, so Finns, Alaskans, Siberians, Norwegians, Swedish, the people that are in and around the Arctic Circle tend to generally be more compassionate and generous than you find in other places. I think some of this stems from our native cultures and that they have had to survive on so little in such a harsh climate that everything becomes a communal thing and people help each other, and they're very willing to reach out and help their neighbor, and they're very willing to assist an elderly person that lives 3 blocks up the road because they can't go out and they can't hunt anymore or they can't get around so easily. And we see this, and it carries over even into modern day now that we've gotten outside of a lot of that village life, at least in some of the larger areas like Fairbanks. In Finland, not everybody has a whole lot, but we see that they can be very content with simple things in life. They're not focused on materialism. They're focused on being proud of their country and being able to provide for themselves and their families. And it's something that can be really noted and something that can be looked up to from other societies. They're a very young culture as far as their independence goes, and they have done some amazing things in a short amount of time.